A fluttering, twinkling wave of periwinkle blue from within heaven's deepest azure, a new beginning to the unfolding of time in my life, to set sail upon a voyage of innermost thought and being, to discover a sacred unknown as my living soul. I don't know the beginning of the speech impediment that I had. When I was in 7th grade and would attempt to read or answer a question, I would stutter without being aware of it. I was in a classroom of 30 kids. I was heedless of some of my schoolmates' laughter when I spoke or tried to. With enough effort, I would eventually get out the verbal response. There was a day where I apparently was having a more difficult time than usual. First, there were a couple, then many more in my class who laughed aloud at my stuttering. Sister Rose was my 7th grade teacher. She hollered at the whole class, "Stop it, stop it. You are not to laugh at him." There was an immediate silence. I felt an inner strength and confidence, which I hadn't felt before. I continued reading unimpeded without the stutter. This was the first I became aware that I had this speech impediment. Throughout my adult life in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, when I was alone and the temptation to be evil within my innermost thoughts would sometimes come to me, the image of Sister Rose would appear to me within, and all of a sudden, the temptation along with the thoughts or fantasy, whether they be of a sexual or violent nature, would vanish altogether. Years later, and in my late 40s, I went back to Pittsburgh. After some phone calls, I was able to contact the convent where Sister Rose was living in retirement. The nun on the phone at the convent arranged a meeting with Sister Rose. I took 2 buses to travel across town. It was early evening, 6 p.m., when I knocked on the entrance door to the retirement house. We met for an hour. It was 36 years later. She didn't remember me or the incident when she stopped my schoolmates from laughing at me. I said to her, "That is okay, sister. What is important is that I remember you and what you did for me." It meant a lot to me back then. Throughout a lot of my adult life, you were like a guardian angel to me, for me, protecting me from thinking evil and preventing me from carrying hate and spite in my heart. She seemed to accept what I said, and I hoped the visit was as pleasant to her as it was for me. I was still weak and frail physically. There was agitation, stress, and turmoil going on continually inside me. Dinner time was still the most dangerous time of the day for me. There was many a day where I couldn't eat because I had no appetite for food or because I would be beat up at the dinner table, and then I would go upstairs to my bedroom crying. I was in the 8th grade. It was our 1-hour lunch recess. My classmates and I were gathering outside to assemble to go back into the classroom. One of them had a lipstick tube. All of a sudden, there were 5 of them, and they all came towards me laughing. I darted across the street. They gave chase. They grabbed me. The kid with the lipstick tube ran it over my face a couple of times. They were all laughing. They thought it funny as all heck. They went back across the street and into line. I went into the restroom and looked in the mirror. I saw streaks of red across my face and lips. I washed it off. I felt a sigh of relief. I had thought when I ran across the street that I might get beat up. I didn't know how I would have reacted. I was fearful of crying and shaming myself in front of everyone at school. I wasn't upset at what had happened. I was inwardly thankful that I had escaped from being exposed as a broken kid and a weakling. Somehow, in some way, this was a small triumph and accomplishment for me. Everything was okay. Later in the school year, on my walk home, I was stopped and challenged to a fist fight by one of the 7th graders. Perhaps he had seen or heard how weak I was. He wanted, for whatever reason, to fight me. I accepted his challenge. We set our books on the ground. We began immediately fighting on the sidewalk. We swung and flailed our fists at each other. The fight lasted only a minute or 2. He didn't hit me, but I did hit him in the face at least once. He said to stop the fight. He was crying. I started to cry too. I felt empathy towards him, unreasonable as it may have been. That's the way it was. Time passed. I was through the 8th grade and about to enter the 9th grade in a public school. The beatings were still continuing. I thought of my mother as a protector and thought she really loved me. She was forced to follow my father's dictate that she not touch me or address any verbal affection towards me. Did she not stand alongside my father when he was slapping my face or my head and holler at him, "Don't mark his face. He has to go to school tomorrow"? I was glad she was there. I felt for my sake that she was preventing my father in his deranged state of madness from bashing my face in. Also in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, I wore dental braces to straighten the crooked teeth that I had. Did this not prove she cared about me? I Believed in God and in Jesus. In grade school, I went to Mass once a week with my class. On Sundays, I usually went by myself to an earlier Mass than my parents. I think it was once a week with my class that I went to confession. What sins could I possibly have to confess to? So-called impure thoughts of a woman's nudity were one of them. I remember one of the 10 Commandments, to honor thy father and mother. My father was my dad in my thoughts, but I didn't feel anything for or about him, other than being terrorized. Yet he was my dad, and I was a true believer in the Catholic Church, God, and in Jesus. My father deserved my respect and my thoughts. To have done otherwise would have been a sin. What uplifted my spirits was following and having favorite sports teams to root for. Beginning from when I was 10 and in the 6th grade, I started following the local teams. I read the sports section in the daily newspaper, and I listened to the games on the radio. And I watched them when they were on TV. I rooted for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Pittsburgh Steelers, University of Pittsburgh, and Penn State with all my heart and being. I would be glued to the TV set or to the radio. I seldom, if ever, missed one of their games. If I could listen or watch, I followed every pitch, every play. I would be especially devastated if they lost, and if they won, I would be euphoric. I never gave up on any one of my teams that I followed, even if the Pirates were losing by 10 runs or the Steelers were 4 touchdowns behind. I hung in there. I followed the batting statistics of each baseball player, and I knew the wins and losses of each pitcher. In football, I knew the touchdowns and interceptions thrown by the quarterback and the average yards gained per rush by the running backs. I followed the Pirates' games on the radio and in the sports pages of the daily newspaper. I saw several of their games at Forbes Field, either on not whole Saturday with the YMCA or a couple times on Sunday when they would play a doubleheader. With the money I earned from being a paper boy, I would take a bus and then a streetcar out to Forbes Field on Sundays by myself. I would stay and watch both games of the doubleheader. I was totally immersed in the games from the first pitch until the last one. I was enthralled with what was going on in the playing field. In October of 1960, the Pirates defeated the New York Yankees in Game 7 of the World Series to become the champions. I remember after the game, I was so excited that I couldn't stay in the house, so I went outside and walked around. I remember more than several of the cars honking their horns in celebration, paying tribute to the Pirates and their victory. It was an incredible afternoon and day for me. It was the ultimate experience of my young life. I relived the Pirates' win over and over again throughout the remainder of my youth. It was a wonderful feeling. I dreamed of becoming a professional baseball or football player. In baseball, I was going to be a pitcher who would strike out a lot of batters and would be unhittable. At 10 and 11 years old, I practiced slinging the ball into the pass, an imaginary hitter by throwing the pitch sidearm. In football, my favorite player for the Pittsburgh Steelers was Billy Wells, a punt and kickoff returner. I imagined I would be like him and have blazing speed and an elusive quickness. When I ran with the ball, none of the defenders would be able to catch me. For 3 summers, aged 10 to 12, I would go down to a baseball playing field, and with a number of other kids around my age, we would play 2 or 3 pickup games that would last all afternoon. I had fun and great times. I was so happy to be a part of the guys and of something that was bigger than me. The games were loosely organized by a young man, Ernie, who oversaw the sports activities at the YMCA. He also organized baseball not-hole games to go out to see the Pittsburgh Pirates play on Saturday afternoons at Forbes Field. The games only cost 50 cents for each kid, and the YMCA chartered a bus for 60 to 70 of us kids to go to the game. Ernie was the best of men for any of us kids to be around. It was the summer of 1961, and Roger Maris hit 61 home runs, and Mickey Mantle hit 54 home runs for the New York Yankees. They were playing in Cleveland on the weekend in midsummer. And Maris and Mantle, what they were doing, it was everything. He got tickets for 4 of us boys, and he drove all of us down to Cleveland to watch the Saturday and Sunday afternoon games. We all shared 2 hotel rooms near the ballpark, and all of us were thrilled when we saw Maris and Mantle hit back-to-back home runs in one of the games. This is one of my super childhood memories, reflecting way back when. My play as a young baseball player was poor. I couldn't run, hit, or field. All the games were pickup games, and of 16 to 20 kids, I was always picked last or next to last. That was okay with me because I would nevertheless be picked. Games were all slow-pitched, but I just couldn't hit the ball. They would always bat me last or next to last. I would neither strike out or ground out weakly to one of the fielders. I was afraid of the ball if it was to hit me. They would usually stick me out in right field, where most of the balls wouldn't be hit. If a ball was hit on the fly near me, I would most always miss it or misplay it. One of the guys nicknamed me Groucho, or Groucho Marx, the movie comedian, because I made him laugh. I was slow and ran flat-footed. That made some of the guys laugh. We played the games on a dirt field. They would say, "There goes Groucho, stomping on down to first base and kicking up a cloud of dust." It was all okay. I got to play, and I was a part of the guys and the game. I would look forward to playing and talking about how the Pittsburgh Pirates were doing that summer. We would speak about the players' hitting statistics and who the Pirates would be playing Saturday afternoon if it was a not-whole game. I was also on a Pony League team, ages 12 and 13. Near the end of my last summer of baseball playing, my play improved. I had lost my fear of being hit by the ball. I would keep my eye on the ball when I swung the bat, and sometimes it would connect solidly with the ball, and I would get a base hit. What was most important for me was the sportsmanship and friendship that I learned, experienced, and practiced. To not begrudge the opposition team if they won by not spoiling their fun, and not be resentful of an opposing player if he was having a good game. I learned that sports were team games, and to experience joy while I was playing, and to accept the losing with the winning. It's part of the game. What was imparted to me was the example of being a man the way Ernie was. It was said that he was a hot prospect as a baseball player for the Brooklyn Dodgers. He played shortstop in the minor leagues. In one of the games, he slid into a base and permanently injured one of his legs, where he could no longer play at a high level. He was in his 20s when I made his acquaintance as a young boy. He was a good man who was even-tempered. I never saw him be angry or get out of control with any of us young kids. He commanded the respect and liking of all of us who played baseball with him. In the effort at being as a man and as a human being on this planet, he helped me out a lot with his inspiration and example. The Catholic Church was right across the street in grade school I attended. I would sometimes see Ernie entering or leaving the church from an early morning mass that he had attended. When I think of a Christian man and the noble ideal of brotherly love, I think of Ernie. He practiced, lived, and shared the sentiment with so many of us young boys. I was very fortunate without being aware of it. From making the acquaintance of Ernie to having the Catholic nuns and 2 women lay teachers in my life, I always was safe and secure under their care and tutelage. I believe that it was this means that helped carry me through the latter part of my childhood years without me going insane from losing my mind, from screaming and crying from my life most every day from the beginning of the 4th grade on up to and including the 8th grade. My present day. How am I to explain spiritual insanity? It is a horrible feeling that won't go away or diminish. It is a soulless existence unto itself. It won't take flight of its own volition. I try to avoid self-inflicted wounds of shame and humiliation within my thoughts and innermost being. I am learning how to begin to share and experience a miracle of creation and being that is inside me. There is a spiritual sanity along with a phenomenon of self-creation, the coming to be of a living soul. I have to reject, oppose, and resist the pull of a spiritual gravity within me towards a lower descent of feeling of depression and unhappiness. I am trying to ignite a passion, a spark of light to come into being. If I can try to practice living and experiencing my life in a way of a higher good and of a brighter light from within, then I might experience a phenomenon of spirit, light, and inner beauty from within myself, or appreciate it from within another. For me, a practiced art of being is seeking a path of spiritual sanity to follow and to live. I can't permit a dark light within to guide and drag me down. Spiritual sanity is like being a detective trying to uncover hidden inner truths to use as an enlightenment and an inspiration to be in a way of a higher good and of a brighter light from within.